This is a national emergency.
Detonator charged.
Oppenheimer is monumental. Christopher Nolan's newest is without a doubt one that will go down in film history as one of the defining films of this decade. It's an expertly crafted, nuanced, and harrowing character study that delves into the mind of one of the most famous and important figures in human history, and tells the story of the Manhattan Project, the creation of the atomic bomb, the post-Hiroshima and Nagasaki fallout, and how the government tried to destroy the man they hired to do everything for them, told, for the majority of it, entirely through Oppenheimer's subjective and objective perspective. While it does lose me a bit in the last act, courtroom dramas in general just aren't my thing, it still remains an undeniably extraordinary feat of filmmaking, and just the fact alone that we have a movie like this, an intensely artistically driven 3-hour-long historical drama, in theaters right now, as a big summer blockbuster is incredible. The Flash can suck my nuts. Now, at this point we all know that Oppenheimer is great, but one of the core aspects about the movie was how it was filmed. Oppenheimer is one of the few films to be shot on 70mm film, which produces an image about 4 times the size of standard 35mm, which is essentially the default size for movies still shot on film nowadays. And not only is it 4 times the size, 70mm produces the crispest, clearest, and detailed images a film camera can possibly capture, outside of like NASA super cameras.
That's conventional 35mm. We shoot on 70mm. The other format we use is 70mm IMAX. It's the highest quality imaging format ever devised. It gives you an incredible sense of immersion in the image. The clarity, the crispness, it is the gold standard. It is the closest to reproducing the world the way that your eye sees it.
Now, because of the film having shot on this format, multiple different versions of it exist. You have the actual 70mm prints, these massive 11-mile long 600-pound film reels that get fed through a 70mm projector and projected onto a gargantuan screen that gives you the full, unedited, unchanged image. This is the version Christopher Nolan intended the film to be seen in, so it is the best possible way to see it. Then you have 35mm prints of the same film that crop it way down. You got digital IMAX, which is a digital version of the same film, projected on a screen that is slightly bigger than a 35mm, so it doesn't quite get the same visual fidelity that you get from the film prints, but it's as close as you can possibly get. And then there's regular standard Dolby Digital for regular movie screens. There's some more options out there too, but for this video I wanted to focus on comparing and contrasting the main 3 options available for the general public: 70mm, digital IMAX, and standard digital, and see just how different of an experience it really is and if it's really worth all the fuss. So starting us off, we have standard 70mm. Now, Christopher Nolan is outspoken about 70mm IMAX as the intended way to see the film. It's the full unedited image projected on a monolithic screen that slightly curves around the audience in order to fill the peripheral vision to fully immerse you into the film and in its images. And I have no doubt that this is 1000% the best way to experience this film, but given that there are only 30 theaters in the entirety of the United States that have a full 70mm IMAX screen, and tickets for the closest theaters sold out within the first hours of them going on sale, for most people wanting to see the movie on 70mm, you'll have to settle for the next best option, which is 70 on a standard screen. So I was off to San Francisco to revisit the new Mission Alamo Drafthouse Theater, a theater I talked about at length already, for the second time this year, since they have a 70mm projector there. And here I had an authentic projected on film experience, and it looked wonderful, and it was my first actual movie I'd seen projected on film since digital projection became the standard. Essentially, it produces an incredibly textured image. It simultaneously is the cleanest and most detailed version of the film, and also a little janky and rough around the edges, but it adds to the experience in a way. There's a light grain and flicker throughout the film, and about every 30 minutes the cue mark would appear, and the projectionist would switch reels, causing the image to blur and reveal the calibration screen for a brief moment. The image had a deeper color saturation, and the black and white scenes especially felt like they popped more vividly than in the digital versions of the film I saw. The brighter scenes were brighter and the darker scenes were darker. All intensely lit scenes felt a lot more dynamic than in the digital formats. It's hard to explain, but everything felt both more naturalistic and expressive at the same time. It also wasn't on a full 70mm IMAX screen, but the Alamo screen is massive, bigger than the average megaplex screen. So with the big screen experience, 70mm film, and that booming audio that the Alamo provided too, it was an extraordinary viewing experience, so I'm glad I did it first. While I do think more modern casual movie-going audiences would prefer the cleaner, more simple digital versions of the film, The imperfections led to a more detailed image, and I wouldn't trade that grain, flickering, or the film getting all wonky when switching between reels for a more standard digital format. After writing off the high of Oppenheimer in 70mm, a few days later I decided to revisit it, this time in digital IMAX. There's a Galaxy Megaplex with an IMAX screen near where I am, so I went there. Now, in terms of the aspect ratio and pure size of the image, this is closer to the intended way Nolan wants the film to be experienced in. However, the trade-off being with it projected digitally, you really lose a lot of that texture and density in the images that the film provides. This is all stuff that 99% of all regular moviegoers just won't notice, but going straight from 70mm to this, the lighting looks noticeably duller and slightly more muted and less vibrant, but this is something that could be the fault of the digital projector Galaxy uses for this IMAX screen. By all means, standard digital IMAX is more of a suitable alternative to standard 70mm or 70mm IMAX. The sound especially was a highlight, but for a film buff like me, I really did miss the grime the film print offered. The cigarette burns popping up, the light flickering during brighter scenes, the grain. To me, it's all beautiful stuff, but to most people, they aren't going to care, so regular digital IMAX is still a really great way to experience Oppenheimer, since you get that fuller aspect ratio that completely fills the IMAX screen. If you're sitting closer to the screen especially, Cillian Murphy completely towers over you like a monolithic deity from an ancient mythological story, and the enhanced, widened aspect ratio during some sequences like the Trinity bomb test really make it worth it. And finally, after working my way down, I revisited the film once again in the way most moviegoers will, in standard digital. Instead of going to another megaplex, I saw it here at the beautiful State Theater of Modesto, California, in a massive 500-seat auditorium. This time I did go to a captioned showing that this theater provides, which is incredible, so I was able to pick up on more of the story that I actually missed the first two times, which was really nice. Oppenheimer still has a little bit of that Tenet problem, where the dialogue at some points is just completely inaudible because of the score being so loud. But the way I see it, standard digital should really only be seen if you're just unable to see it in either 70mm or IMAX. The movie itself is still immaculate. It's not like the different formats change the story or anything. But standard digital, especially after having experienced 70 and IMAX, wasn't the most ideal way to see it. For one, having been shot in 70mm for IMAX, it's trapped in a very specific aspect ratio that doesn't quite fit standard 2:35:1 size screens, which is what you'll find in any regular megaplex. So instead of cropping the image to fit and losing parts of the image in the process, it shrunk just slightly to fit the image completely, but in return you get these black bars on the tops and sides, so it looks like you're watching a smaller image within the frame on the screen. And because of this, after having seen the film completely filling two massive screens, it was a little hard to get adjusted to at first. And on top of that, the image it's outputting isn't the sharpest of the three by a big margin. It really lacks that vibrancy and clarity of the 70mm print and the massive immersive size and scale of IMAX. So it's really left as just a lesser version of the film in general. But once again, at least the sound is magnificent. The State Theater where I saw it has a beautiful Dolby surround sound system, and it's incredibly immersive. Again, I want to restate that this is all just me, and by all means, 99% of the people won't notice or care about any of the slight differences between these versions. And the film itself, story-wise, is still just as intelligent and nuanced and thought-provoking, no matter what you watch it on. But it just feels like a mildly lesser experience seeing the smaller, less immersive version of the film. To summarize it all up, standard digital is basically like a McDonald's quarter pounder. It ain't spectacular, but it's serviceable and it'll make you full. IMAX is a mouth-watering, juicy, delicious in-and-out double-double animal style, and 70mm is a smash burger from the Los Angeles Central Market, i.e. the greatest burger on planet Earth. It's still a masterpiece no matter what you watch it on, but to get the fullest experience you possibly can out of it, try to seek out a 70mm IMAX showing. If not, any standard 70mm showing will do, and if not that, then just digital IMAX. And if all else fails, you can settle for watching it on standard digital at any old megaplex, as long as you end up watching it in a theater and not on your phone or something like that.
Now, if you're playing the movie on a telephone, you will never in a trillion years experience the film. You'll think you have experienced it, but you'll be cheated. It's such a sadness that you think you've seen a film on your fucking telephone. Get real.
Thanks for watching.